Okay, everyone, it's time for math. We are in chapter 11 and on lesson 6. We've been looking at how we can measure objects. That is our main essential question. Today, we're also going to try to answer this. How can I use logical reasoning to solve word problems? In other words, how can I solve word problems? They can be very difficult. There can be a lot of reading, but we've done so many of these this year. I think this slideshow will be pretty short because you already know the strategies. And the good news is you probably won't need a ruler for any of this, or a tape measure, or a yardstick. Okay, so it says here at the top, Coco wants to plant a garden. She cannot decide if it should be 10 inches, 10 feet, or 100 yards long. About how long should the garden be? Well, we know that step one is we have to underline and circle, right? Underline what you know, circle what you need to find. Our old song. Number two, plan. How will I solve the problem? Three, use logical reasoning. It means think about it. Think about what makes sense. 10 inches is too short for a garden. Okay, 10 inches that's shorter than your notebook is. And 100 yards is too big for a garden. 100 yards is a football field. So the garden should be 10 feet long. Okay? They gave us three choices. Should it be 10 inches, 10 feet, or 100 yards? And we just have to think about each one. And then check, is my answer reasonable? Okay, that's very important. Don't just answer and run off to the next question, but see if it makes sense. And think about the measurements that you know. Your notebook is almost 12 inches tall if you stand it up. You are about 4 feet or 48 inches. Okay, so think about all of the things that you've measured in the first 5 lessons of this chapter, and that should give you a good idea of how big and small things are. Okay, so let's practice the strategy, and this one is not a very good example. Zachary is looking up at the diving board, at the high diving board at the pool. Okay, that's important. Zachary is looking up at the high diving board at the pool. He's looking up. Is the high diving board 10 inches high, 10 feet high, or 10 yards high? Sorry. Well, let's think about this. We've underlined and circled. Now we've got a plan how we will solve it. Well, Zach is looking up at the high diving board at the pool. So Zach is probably just a regular person of average height. So maybe he's your height, or maybe he's my height, somewhere in there. If he's looking up, he can't really look up if it's only 10 inches high. That doesn't make any sense because 10 inches is so short. That's shorter than your notebook. It's shorter than a Chromebook. So 10 inches doesn't make sense. Now, is it 10 feet high or 10 yards high? Well, this is not a very good question because both exist. Now, 10 yards would be, that's about as tall as some people's houses, maybe taller. So 10 yards is 30 feet. Well, if Zachary is diving in the Olympics, I suppose it's possible. But probably it's going to be this one. Okay, so in this case, there would be two acceptable answers, but we know that 10 inches is impossible. Okay, so both 10 feet high and 10 yards high are possible, but this is probably going to be 10 feet high. 10 yards high would be if this were a very, very, very special diver, somebody who could compete at the Olympics or something like that. Okay, let's move on. So, number one, Sam planted a tomato plant that is 1 foot tall. Okay, a tomato plant that is 1 foot tall. The plant grows a little each week. After 4 weeks, what would the plant be? 10 inches or 14 inches tall? I'm not going to circle it because I don't want to block out any of the text. But think about it. The plant is 1 foot tall. Well, what's 1 foot? How many inches is it? Good. It's 12 inches. After 4 weeks, would it be 10 inches or 14 inches tall? And now, remember, we're trying to think about what makes sense. Would it make sense for it to be 10 inches tall? That would mean that it got shorter, and that doesn't make any sense. So the only reasonable answer is this. And of course, we have to remember to put it on the line. Number 2, Jane made a paper chain that is 1 yard long. Brad made a paper chain that is 2 feet long. Who made the longer paper chain? Okay, so here we have to be careful because Brad's chain is 2 feet long. Jane's chain is 1 yard long. These aren't the same thing. So we have to compare. We have to think about our comparison of measurements, which we did in lessons 4 and 5. Under that it says, how many feet longer is it? So first we have to find this here. Who made the longer chain? And here we have to say how much longer it is. Number 3, Mr. Moore's class is collecting things to measure. Lisa finds a pine cone. Would the pine cone be 3 inches, 3 feet, or 3 yards long? This one shouldn't be too difficult unless you've never seen a pine cone before. Okay, let's move on. Number 4, Santos connects 6 markers. Each marker measures 5 inches. How long are all the markers together? There are a couple of ways you can do this. You can draw this out and skip count. If you feel comfortable using multiplication, you can do that. You have a couple of strategies that you can use for number 4. Number 5, Jamil had a pencil that was 6 inches long. After a month of use, it was only an inch long. How many inches did Jamil use? Okay, and then number 6, Suni measured from one end of her kitchen table to the middle. The distance was 42 inches long. Then she measured from the middle to the other end. This distance measured the same length. How long is the table? So you have to go slowly here. You might want to draw this and follow all the steps. That's a lot of writing. There's like a paragraph there. Go slowly. The math is actually not that difficult. You just have to figure out what they're saying. Okay, but the numbers part of it is not that hard. Okay, so your homework is to complete pages 681 and 2. Okay, it's just word problems. It's nothing that you can't handle. You just have to go slowly, underline, circle, read carefully, and use the strategies that you know. Maybe you have to draw, maybe you have to skip count. Just think about what makes sense and keep in mind how long a foot is, how long a yard is, how long an inch is. Okay? All right, have a great day. The end.